You say we're going to be where Europe is. Is that are you seeing things in America that you saw in Europe, and so you're seeing a move to that direction?
It's different because your church base is stronger than ours was. So if you like, they will. If things don't change, this is my prediction. In 30 years' time, you'll have little ghettos of church life, but they will be absolutely irrelevant and probably unnoticed by the wider American culture. You'll be sitting there looking at the political scene, wondering how you lost that. You'll be sitting looking at the social scene, wondering how you lost that. And most significantly, you'll be just looking out at the vast majority of your population and wondering how you lost them.
Go back to your article, okay? You said that you see highlights of American culture, television programs, those kind of things, but they didn't necessarily help you at all. One of your comments was that are the programs there for Jesus, or is Jesus there for the programs? And that really affected the UK.
Yes. Do you know where it affects most? And where my heart gets broken most is I watch a lot of these things when we go to Africa. The African church, Jason, is wonderful. But it's so badly taught that most of their teaching comes from your American guys on TV, you see. And some of them are fantastic. Others of them, though, they're actually preaching a gospel which I just don't see much of Jesus. It's about my ministry. It's about this. And what you then see on a Sunday is those pastors who've been watching these programs. They stand up in the pulpit and they don't preach Jesus either. They preach as long as this church is rich and I am rich. You know, it fits the African psyche, because it's such a tribal psyche, that if the tribal chief is wealthy, the tribe is wealthy. But that's just not the gospel. The gospel is about serving, about becoming the greater servant. And sometimes I wonder, when I look at that stuff, I just wonder whether it does any. Well, can I be absolutely blunt?
Go.
Whether it really harms the gospel and the advance of the gospel across parts of the world.
So in getting away, necessarily the American church or ministries, television or whatever, in getting away from preaching Jesus and really going to really the heart of the gospel, we've really kind of that's where we've lost the battle, is what you're saying, right?
See, this article was an interesting one, because I start by saying I believe American church is God's gift to the global church. And a lot of people in Europe said rubbish. But you see, what they don't see, because they see the negatives and they see these things, and they you know, as Europeans do, tend to take a very negative stance. They don't see the potential, and that's what I see. And with all your resources and the wonder of Christian media, I mean, I'm an enthusiast of Christian media. Just because it's used badly by some people doesn't make it wrong. Right. I mean, you've got massive. You could. It's just so phenomenal, the opportunities which lie for the American church. What I would say is what John said. He was actually relaying the prophecy of Christ. Wake up, strengthen what remains.
When you say resources, you're not just saying television stations, radio, books, whatever. You're talking people. I'm talking everything.
People. Do you know, Jason? I'm talking people more than anything else. I don't think you are training your young people to go out and grab hold of the Great Commission for Jesus Christ as you could do. I think you're trying, but what I would say is I just want you to grasp just the sheer opportunity. We could, let me make a real brash statement now. If the American church woke up to the potential in its grasp, we could see the Great Commission completed in this generation.
Why do you think we're not training our young people?
I think actually this is one way that you are behind Europe, and perhaps it's because of what I've just said. You're strong enough to just carry on existing your own little ghetto. You don't need the outside world. In Britain, the church is fundamentally weak, so it needs to evangelize to survive. You don't need to do that. So what that means, and again, I'm going to be a little bit controversial now, but why not?
Go ahead. Yeah, right.
What that means is that all your institutions can just survive and just keep going, and in a way, I would say that your training is about 50 years behind where we are in the UK. Not just in the Christian world, but in the secular world too. Where now study fits alongside on-the-job experience. So we don't send people away so often now to Bible college for 3 years, 4 years to get a bachelor's in youth ministry. What we do is we set them as an intern for 3, 4 years in a church, and then we form a learning community of people around them, so they experience and they study at the same time, and they grow. And that actually is becoming the norm in Europe. Now, I would say that those sorts of models you need to look at very carefully, and you also, in your teaching, need to look at what's actually being taught. I'm passionate about a biblical gospel. I want young people to grab hold again of what the Bible says. But I'm passionate too about showing them how the Bible is relevant and how it makes them look at the world. And I just wonder whether we're asking the right questions in our institutions, in our training colleges. So,
and all we've talked about, it's really a domino effect. One
Yes.
thing affects the next, affects
Yeah.
the next. Is there something you point out that says this is the stopping point of how to stop the domino? Or is it going to have to be, hey, it's going to have to be multiple things that we're going to have to do?
okay, again, I can't put it down as one.
No,
You're going to
that's
have,
okay, that's
to
okay.
help me on this. I think there's a few. I think we need some very brave church leaders who are going to turn around to their youth pastors and say, listen, it's not about you filling these seats with young people, it's about you winning young people for Jesus. And
Now,
I don't care.
We talked about that earlier, that it's a challenge as a youth pastor because
Yeah.
you want the numbers, but then everybody says, well, try something new and be creative and do this. But if you do that, you won't have the numbers.
Sure.
And so they're in the catch-22. So we don't care about the numbers. We want you reaching people.
We
seeing that-
need leaders who are prepared to do that. That's the first. And the second one is about training. We need to find new ways of training, new ways of, and that's actually the reason that Melissa and myself are here in the States, because we're bringing all these Americans to Europe. Well, why not do some of that here in the States as well?
So, okay, we want to do some training. How do people get a hold of you? Maybe they got questions about what we've talked about, or they want to get involved in how to do some training. How do they contact you?
Well, listen, first of all, I'd love some questions, not just questions, some feedback, because we're learning.
So even if people don't agree with what we've said, you want to hear
I'd
it.
love to hear it, because actually we're learning. We want to try to understand what God is doing in the global church. We have a website, icy.org.uk, and I'd be really interested to hear from youth pastors, church pastors. We want to visit churches. I speak at churches. We can share some of these thoughts. Do any of that? Want to hear from young people interested in training for youth ministry in Europe, America? We just love dialoguing and throwing these ideas around. Listen, I'm not an expert, Jason. I just want to hear what the Lord's doing.
Just trying to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Really.
You wrote a book, The Patriarch. It was. Tell us a little bit about this book. Where did it come from? Why this?
Came from two things, really. One is what I just said just now. I've got a real passion for the Bible. My big fear, actually, another big fear for this generation is that we're not bringing them up as a biblically literate generation. When I grew up as a Christian, you had a quiet time every day. And it became a bit legalistic, but at least I had it. This generation aren't doing that. This book's it's actually written in a novel form because I wanted it to be accessible. It just follows the story of Abraham. And the vision is, Lord, please just open the story of Abraham up to young people. So if they won't read the Bible, maybe they read a novel. And it's written actually, all the money raised from it goes on the mission field to support the guys doing youth ministry out there. That's the other thing. Too many wonderful people out there doing too many wonderful things to not want to support them.
One final question before we have to wrap up and do all the fun stuff there. But what really is the UK's view of the American church?
It's too big to answer. We love some of the stuff, some of the programs and some of the stuff that comes out. Of course, you've got the bigots there saying, anything American is rubbish. Don't listen to that, by the way, because most of those people haven't a clue what they're talking about. Generally speaking, we love America. We love the American church. We see so much potential. What we don't want is you guys just coming to Europe and doing the American thing. We want you guys coming to learn, and then we can learn from you and us.
What's the American thing?
Well, basically, sometimes it's a bit like McDonald's. You have a McDonald's in America, so we'll have it in Europe, we'll have it in Africa, we'll have it in Australia. Now, that doesn't work. And actually, we're going to get onto a whole new theme now. We don't want to do it. But actually, you're going to have to think far more creatively than that. One model fits all, forget it. It's people-centered. Jesus and Paul, if you follow them, their strategy, Paul's strategy in Athens, different to that in Corinth, and that's what we need to know. We need to get into a community. How are we going to reach this community? Let's not presume just to go in and say, this is it. Let's hear, let's listen, let's feel what those people are feeling. Let's understand them, and that works for young people, works for adults, works for whole cultures, actually. And that they're the sort of folks we like, and there are loads of them in this country. Let's get them out there to do that.
Well, hopefully this conversation will spark at least some dialogue
I
between
hope so.
churches, youth pastors, and
Yeah.
we do have a big job ahead of us.
Yeah.
We're going to have to change a mentality of a generation, really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, actually, the younger generation have got the right mentality. They know how to network and all that stuff. We just got to free them and inspire them and envision them and lead them by our example.
So it comes down to leadership, once again.
Yeah.
So we need some key leaders out there to step up and make some changes in what they're doing, really. If you have any questions for Colin, you'd like to talk to him, send him an email. Stop by his website, www.icy.org.uk. Got that right?
Colin@icy.org.uk is my email address. And again, I'd love to communicate, love to visit. Actually, we're going to be spending a lot more time in the States next year.
Thanks, Colin. Really do appreciate your insight.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see some changes happen and take place.
Jason, thank you.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.